Okay, welcome everybody. This is really exciting. I want to welcome everyone that has joined the Presentation Guild for this live webinar, New 3D Tools in PowerPoint. Today we have Stephanie Horn. She's a program manager with the Office Graphics at Microsoft. Stephanie's based on the Redmond campus in Washington State. She manages the group that brings 3D support to Office. Her group's mission is to empower users to produce high-impact messages through visuals. Her group also works with other visual efforts, and she is one of the groups responsible, or the main group responsible for bringing us things like SVG support and the iconography to Office. So we're very excited about everything that Stephanie is putting together and working for. She's been with Microsoft for almost a decade, I believe. You're coming up on your 10-year anniversary and always working in visualizations. I know you started with the Visio team for probably half of that, 5 years, and then you took the opportunity to switch to support the Office visualization platform as a member of the Office graphics team. So everybody on this call really, really likes your efforts there. And then on a personal note, this was kind of fun and exciting. Stephanie loves Ultimate Frisbee. Not that she gets a lot of time with a couple of young boys running around, but two more quick announcements. We have Echo Swinford of Echo's Voice, a presentation designer, the president of the Presentation Guild, who is running everything technical about the webinar. We have also to thank her for coordinating this topic, the presenter, and making it available to everyone, not just Presentation Guild members. I am Troy Chollar from TLC Creative Services and host of this webinar. Now, before we get started, a few quick housekeeping items for those that have not been on one of the Presentation Guild webinars. This is a one-way webinar, so there's no need to mute your phones or worry about any background noise. We won't be able to hear it. Everyone does have a Q&A panel in the GoToMeeting setup, and that's really important because we're going to use that for any comments to you, as well as, more importantly, any questions you have for Stephanie. I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A panel throughout the webinar, and then we have a couple of points throughout where there is going to be Q&A to Stephanie. So please make use of that. I will try and get everything organized so that we can get as much from Stephanie as possible. In addition, I'm not sure we're going to use this. We actually didn't discuss this, but Echo does have the ability to add live polling, which is just a mouse click answer on the main screen. It may be as simple as a yes, no, or a raise the hand button. Let's see here. Stephanie, Echo, and myself also have our webcams on at different points. We're going to be turning those on primarily during the Q&A time, so I'm going to turn mine off here in just a moment. If you don't want to see the webcams, you do have control within GoToMeeting to actually hide those for just your screen. And last, this is being recorded, and the Presentation Guild will make replay available at a future date. I don't have the date, and I'm sure it'll be announced soon, but this is really exciting to make this available. So with that, I'm going to turn this webcast over to Stephanie Horn. Stephanie, please enlighten us on these great new things.
Thank you, Troy. I'm very excited to be here today. Wanted to start with why 3D. So I think that's important. We have a new tool in the tools that you can use for presentations now. And why would you use 3D? And I'm going to start with a fact from the education space. Research has shown that 3D improves retention, attention, and overall academic performance. And that's not really surprising because when you think of humans and how we interact with the environment, which is all 3D. We learn, we engage, we grow in this 3D environment. So 3D is a natural tool that our brain knows how to process very well. So I brought this rock today. Here we go. This is it's got fossils on it. You can sort of see that. So I could tell lots of stories about this rock. It happens to be a rock that my family got recently at a dig site in Eastern Washington. So I could tell a story, for example, about sort of educate you about this rock and these fossils, which are 50 million years old. I could persuade you to go visit this site. I could ask that we preserve this site for generations to come. There are lots of stories that I could tell about this rock. Now, to be honest, it's sort of awkward to hold up this physical rock and show it to you. If you were here in person, I might hand it to you and let you explore it and look at it. But you're not, so that's where digital medium comes in. Now, I took a geology course at college, so I know very well what happens when you take a rock like this and you try and put it in digital format. So this is what my professor used to do, is he used to like take a picture of this, 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 and then put all these visuals together in the presentation. And then he'd show it. So a lot of the data is there because you can see the different sides, but it's still very hard for your brain to comprehend. You get a presentation, it's a bunch of static pictures. You're missing the context of each of the images, each of the views. So you don't know how they go together. So while you're trying to give an impactful message, instead your audience is sitting there trying to decipher how this fits together. So that's where 3D comes in, where you now have this tool where you want to make something, going back to the education fact, you want to make something that's memorable and that's engaging, and you have something that's got a multi-dimension message. So this could be a real thing, like my rock example. Those are 3D objects naturally, so they have a 3D story to them naturally. Or it could be something more metaphoric or less physical, where you're trying to portray a message and it's got multiple components to it. So now I want to jump into my screen. It's the magic moment where it says that you are seeing my screen now. So here I've got the digital version of this walk. So here I am in PowerPoint, and this here is a 3D object. So I can turn it, explore it, spin it. There's my leaf. And now I have all the context right here, and I can build out a deck that explains this rock. I can share it, and people can explore it on their own, or I can give you a guided tour inside a presentation. Now, perhaps because I'm jaded from this geology class, I'm going to skip to another presentation. I'll come back to this rock later. But I wanted to show you this other one. So this is another presentation. This is the Hubble Space Telescope. I have right here, I can click on it. You can tell it's a 3D object because it's got the 3D rotation handle here in the middle. I can give it a spin. Now I'm told on this webinar there's a bit of lag, so I'll try and spin it slowly so you can get as many frames as possible. It's got that special tool now. You can move it, resize it. All the other PowerPoint things naturally work with it. And what I'm going to do is build out this deck for you. So show you a bit of the tools of 3D models. So this is a deck about the Hubble Space Telescope. I did a Control-C. What I'm doing is building out this deck and showing how I can create different angles of this model. For me, the movement's pretty slow, it's pretty smooth. For you, it may or may not be smooth depending on your connection.
It's a little jumpy, but I think we're seeing it now. Thank you.
All right, so you can move this around. Zoom. Sometimes if you're working with larger models, zooming out a bit gives you the ability to line these up to make them look good. So here's the solar panel one. I can Control Copy, Control V, and swing this around to get a view of the antennas. And now, so this is the basic operation that you can do with a 3D model, but there's some other things that I did want to show you. So on this one talks about the aperture door, which is this part here. But it's a little hard to see, so I wanted to point your attention to both the new contextual tab up here, as well as to the right mouse menu, and there are two items up here. So one thing that I'm going to use here is the pan and zoom tool. So I've got this control here, so I can zoom right in and get it so that I'm just getting a really zoomed in. This might have gone too much, but we will see. A zoomed in view of the aperture door. So because it's a 3D model, it it doesn't get pixelated. It's got the full format for it. I'm going to move it over just a bit more. Let's line it up here. I find when I'm working with really big things, I use the thumbnail a bit to see how it's going to look in the end. But that's going to be really interesting. We'll see how that one turns out in terms of impact. And then at the end, so I copied and I pasted again. Now I've got this really big model. So I'll come back here, and there are some tools here. One is the ability to go to certain fixed views. So I can really quickly reset this back to a view that I want, because here I want just to show the width and the height. So I can line it up right here pretty quickly. So here I have it. I showed some of the tools. We did a bit of the rotation handle, and then we used pan and zoom to zoom in, and we also used these preset views that give you sort of front, back, left, right, top, bottom, so you can see, quickly move to those. So now the really exciting thing is adding motion to this deck. So right now I've got the different views. They're consistent, but right now we're using them somewhat like pictures. So if you go to transitions and you apply a morph transition, this is where you can see the movement from one view to another. So you can create this really high impact scenographic type presentation using the morph transition. So for the webinar, I really slowed down the morphs, so it goes a little slower. That tends to work better, so I've got 6 here when there's potential for some frames being lost. So this is what the deck looks like, this finished deck. And it was pretty fast. I just created it right here from scratch. So we moved through the deck, and I can now tell this story about the Hubble Space Telescope and show you the different components, like the solar panel. And we moved these into place using the 3D rotation handle to get these to show the different angles. Now here I created this really zoomed in view so you can get right in really close. So it has this effect of really grabbing attention and drawing people in. Perhaps it was a little big, but I really wanted to go overboard with this just to show you. And then I go back to this view here where I can see the length and the height. So that's my very quick presentation about Hubble Space Telescopes. So I have more things to show, but I just wanted to take a pause right now and see if there was any questions, Troy.
There are a few, although my favorite is Margie, who just put in clapping as her thing. That is just awesome. I will say that this is previewing, at least for me, and I have a pretty good connection, a little bit slow and not smooth, but I know for my test it is incredibly smooth. Just to clarify, we're basically looking at a morph transition smoothness, correct?
Yeah, so this is morph. What I'm seeing is I'm seeing like a morph smooth transition from one view to another. It's not jumpy or anything like that.
Right.
Smooth.
The first questions are, when is 3D support available to everyone? Can you give a basics of who can get it and when everyone else may get it?
Okay, so here we go. So if you have it off, so there is various rings of O365 for O365 subscription. So first you need an O365 subscription. Right now it is available to fast insiders. So we have an insiders program in Office where we have both fast and slow insiders. And those are folks that get new builds and new features before the general population. And then we have our normal monthly release for our subscription users. So right now it is available publicly to our Fast Insiders ring. That's our first ring of users that get the bits earliest. It is coming soon, so I would, if you are not interested in being Fast Insiders, you get the great new tools. But as we release, the stability increases until it becomes generally available. So Fast Insiders, you can get it now. You can search for the Office Insiders program and join the Fast Ring. Slow Insiders, it's coming soon. So I would watch for information about slow insiders, and then production will come a little later. So we had been telling folks, I think in our last announcement, we said by fall.
So I'll follow that up with, this was a frustration point for me because I just arrived back in my office yesterday or late last night. I was only carrying one computer with me. I am on I'll say an enterprise level or business level Office 365. Fast Insiders is not available to us. Of course, my computer that does get Fast Insiders was nice and safe here at my office, so I haven't been able to play with this all week long. The second question is, will it come to Mac for PowerPoint version? Assuming we're on Office 365 and all the other parameters, is it going to be cross-platform?
The first version is going to your Windows desktop application, so that's where we're launching first. So you'll need Windows desktop. We are looking about bringing it across the ecosystem. Right now, what we do for people who are on different platforms and also for people who have older versions, as we save a picture of the model with the file so that those folks can open it and they see the view that you are currently looking at. So they can get this deck and they can look through and see the Hubble telescope at its different angles. But when they do the presentation on their computer, they'll see a crossfade between images.
And then I'm going to end with this so you can keep going on. There's a lot of questions, but I know they're coming up in the little outline you provided to me. So the big question is, you did it across slides. Can we rotate during a live presentation on a slide? Because that's come up several times.
Yeah, so right now the transitions supported are the ones that are in PowerPoint right now. And we have got some feedback that it would be nice to have a 3D rotation within a slide. So that's something we're keeping in mind. Anytime anyone has any feedback, a great thing to do is you can go File, and then if you look down on the left partway, there's a feedback button. Feel free to put feedback as you're working through 3D or working through anything else in PowerPoint or the Office Suite for that matter, and that'll come back to us. So we're interested in, now that we have the first version that's just releasing, finding out, listening to customers, learning, finding out what other things are important to folks.
I'm going to ask one more before I turn it back over to you because this is a really good one. What are the computer requirements needed to support 3D? So I know there's an OS requirement and maybe some hardware recommendations you can very generally touch on. Yeah,
so we are supported on the same platforms that your Windows desktop Office supports on. There is one caveat about Windows 7 where you need to be updated. But in general, it works across the different Windows OSs. We have tested on a variety of device specifications, similar to some other just general, anytime you're working with videos or other things that require some computation power. The higher the computer, the faster things run. But we have tested across a variety of devices, so you don't have to get a beefy machine.
Great. And just to clarify, we do not need the Windows Creator update to use these capabilities because I know Windows Creator has a lot of 3D news within it.
Yeah. So I'll talk a bit later about what Windows 10 has to offer, but the Office itself, you can install it on your existing machine, and as long as Windows 7 is up to date, or you've got Windows 8, 8.1, 10, you are good to go. Okay, I'm going to stop giving you the questions. Everybody keep pouring them in. I'm going to organize them because I know the next topic is going to try to touch on some of these and a little bit more. So thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to hide my webcam and let you keep going. Okay, perfect. So I know probably the question that Troy was alluding to is how do I get models? So I wanted to go sort of switch into a different presentation just to keep things moving. And so there is an insert button for 3D models right here on the insert tab. And there's two options. There's from file and from online sources. So I'm not going to insert anything from file, but I'm going to click on it anyway just to show you what it is. I've got my fossil here. And I know a common question I get is what formats are coming out in V1. So the formats here are FBX, OBJ, 3MF, PLY, STL, and GLB 2.0 to be specific. So these are the different formats, and when we did a quite intensive study of the formats available, there are a large number of them, many specific to different uses. We tried to get some breadth in the different 3D model support formats, and also see programs, what formats they exported to see if we can get some coverage here. So this is our V1 offering. Again, happy to get feedback about extensions that enable you to use your 3D models. But what I wanted to get into right now is from online sources. So the Windows platform and Microsoft joined together to create a series of tools you can use to create 3D, to share and consume 3D models. So what I've got here is I've got a portal into the Remix 3D community. Now I don't think I've got it open on my desktop, but you can go to www.remix3d.com. These are models which people upload, and Microsoft contributes to the community, as well as a number of other folks. So you can go create a model, you can upload it to this community. So directly from within Office, you have access to this community. Now we've got some curated content, which is sort of the Office hits, and then we also have search. For folks that have the Fast Insiders build right now, you may be searching and you may not see it. So we're on a slightly different rollout for this online 3D models dialog, but watch for it. It is coming shortly as well. So for this particular deck, this deck is about bees. So I can go here and I can select this bee and insert it. So what this is doing is this is going directly to the Remix 3D site under the hood and pulling this model down from that website. So you don't have to leave the app. It can come directly into Office. So there I go. I've got my 3D model and I can place it. Now these models are provided for you to use. They're freely available. So it's not Creative Commons. There's no license restriction that would prevent you from sharing this or reusing it. So I can align this here, and now I've got a bee, and it sort of finishes the bee deck. So I'll walk through. I created this deck already because it's a very similar flow where you can go and you can move the model to the different slides and place it. I thought I would show you this deck to give you a sense of another example of using this one. In this deck, there are two uses for this bee. Again, I've got the morph slowed really down to try and give you as many frame rates as possible. So the bee both provides sort of thematic interest through the deck, where you see the bee moving through the deck on every slide, and it does some of the different scenes of showing different components. So this is my explanation of bees and where they live, and now I'm going to look at some of the different parts of the bee. So this is where I can zoom in, I can look at different components, I can show you exactly where the bee's knees are, I can move around and explore different components of this animal. So here are all the different ones I had dug in on too. And for slides where the bee itself doesn't play an important role, I can still shrink it and use it to give some motion as I move through the deck and some interest. And for those that aren't super familiar with the morph transition, you might have noticed on the last slide a second bee flew in. And you can do the morph transition by having off-slide content. So somewhere over here, here's the bee way down here. And as I morphed between slides, he traveled from outside the slide onto the slide. So you can get effects with 3D models where in one slide it's not there, and the next slide you haven't moved in to give that effect. So that's one way to create 3D. The other thing I wanted to show is this is where you need Windows 10. So I'm now opening Paint 3D, which is an app that comes with Windows 10. And in PowerPoint, the real focus here is to allow you to insert a model, place it, create cinematic effects, zoom in, pan it. But say you want to either build a model or you want to touch up an existing model. So first I'll show quickly building a model. So I'm in my 3D tools. I'm going to drop a sphere. So I went over here. It was already selected. But say I wanted something really simple like the sun. So I really quickly created a sphere. And one of the really interesting things I like about Paint 3D was the notion of stickers. So you can take anything, you can personalize it by adding a sticker. So I have this texture here, which is just firiness. And I can use this stamp to apply this. I'm going to rotate it a couple times to try and get it all stuck on. Now let me see how that goes. Sometimes I've missed the back, but that's not a problem because my sticker's already remembered for me here, and I just go and stamp it on the top. So this is one way to create some simple objects really quickly. So now I've got a sun. For things I want to share with the community, I can go to Remix here, and I can go and I can upload. It'll log me in, so it takes a second, and then there's an upload button here where I can go and I can give this sun to the community. This also gives me, and then there it is. There's some selection to go through just to pick the settings, but now I have my model. I can also save it out. So here I can go menu and I can export and save it to a number of different formats. So that's very quick creating a model. The other thing, I'm going to open this file that I created earlier, which is my fossil. When I had my rock that I wanted to show, I had decided I wanted it digital. Now, I possibly could have found a digital a scanner to scan this into 3D, but that would have required some work. And so what I did was I went to the community and I found rocks. And of course, they did not have a rock with a fossil on it, so I had to make something up. And actually, I uploaded my rock with a fossil, so you can go see my rock. I'll probably take it down later, but I had put it up there. So I wanted something flat because all my rocks were flat, so I found this Xbox Rocks floor. And what I did was I brought this in, I shrunk it down, and then I had my picture, my 2D picture of the leaf back here. So I used the stamp tool to stamp the leaf on. I picked the flat side because usually when you crack these rocks open, it's a pretty flat surface where the leaf is. And then on my other side, you can see like the bump pattern. It's the same rock. And what I did was I painted it. I used some spray paint from the art tools. I left a bit of the coloring on the side to make it more realistic. And then I stamped something else sort of small and hard to tell on the top because these rocks aren't perfect. So that was my quick how to get a 3D rock. That was what I liked. So this is an interesting way using both the stickers, which I really like, and using the art tools to touch something up. Same thing, you've got something and you don't, it's got like a sticker or it's got a label on it, you don't want it, you can remove these types of things. So just for completeness, I'll go back and I'll show you my really simple rock demo. So here's my rock. I took it from Paint 3D, I uploaded it to Remix 3D, and then I brought it into PowerPoint. So I can now, let's see, slow morph, explain how really there's two halves to this rock. You split it open, you see the fossil on each side on the inside. And if you're going to go and do this, there are layers in the rock. It's shale and very lightly layered. And you're able to take a chisel and a hammer and crack these things open to find fossils on the inside. So that was really quick and dirty, but it was an interesting exploration of going and creating my own from scratch. So,
Stephanie, that is phenomenal. I've got a list of questions. I'm going to manage our time as well. But to clarify on that last one, I think this is like one of the more exciting things to happen. Stephanie modified an existing 3D model in Paint 3D. I'm being a little objective here, but the problem with that program is it has the word paint in it, but when you play with it, it is really, really powerful. So it's really, and we should clarify, Paint 3D is available to Windows 10 with the Creators Update. It's included there, correct?
Yeah,
that's the way to say that.
Yeah.
So 3D modeling is basically becoming available to the masses. You don't have to use what's the common apps out there, you know, Maya, SketchUp, Cinema 4D, Blender, other ones. They're pretty high learning curve apps, and you know they cost a little bit more. So this is pretty nifty. Let's start off with questions. Because you have the Hubble telescope up, there's a great question. Could you tell us the file size of that one and your D? I know that a lot of people haven't used 3D models, so they're wondering if it's more of a JPEG ping image file size they're putting in there, or more of a video file size they're putting in there. How large are our files going to become? And I think people will be happy to know that they're not humongous in general terms.
Yeah, so there's quite a diversity. Let me go back and see what this rock size is, just out of curiosity. Oops, I need to go back to select. So the Hubble telescope was about 7 megs in the file. If I go to Remix 3D, this is sort of a cool tool. Like you can see your current file size up here. So this rock was about 3 megs. So that they vary greatly. I would just like pictures, right? It depends on how they've been built. If they were built in a complex tool, they might have a lot of textures and associated things with them. So it is, I would think of them a lot like pictures, where there are many in a reasonable range. You can definitely go and find ones that sit way up at the high end. Like you can go in and find an architectural building plan and bring in, you know, the entire building that I'm sitting in, and that model's going to be really big.
Yes.
And so there is a variety of ranges, and you do have to watch as you're using them, especially the ones you get outside of Remix 3D, because Remix 3D does have a hard limit that they all need to be under 64 meg, and even that,
wow.
A lot of these models are way smaller than that, to be honest. Like they don't hit that even close.
Okay, and then another question that came up, and to go along with the image kind of topic here, if using an earlier version of PowerPoint, PowerPoint will show a static PNG of each model in their end position, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So what you have in the file, so for this deck here, what you have in the file is you have one model, because each of these refer to the same base model. So when you do copy-paste, you're not actually copying the model in the file, you're just copying the link to it. Even though it's got a different view, we save that just as extra XML. So the copy-paste doesn't bloat your file. There is a ping that is saved for each view. So this one's got 5 slides, so you've got 5 pings and 1 model in there.
Great. And then another one is to clarify, there is not currently any slideshow manipulation of a 3D model. Just the morph transition is the only movement of 3D models, correct? So within slideshow, there's no way to access the 3D model capabilities, or modeling, I should say.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, you can do motion, like the normal animations where you can slide it in.
Oh, okay.
So, but it doesn't in terms of really getting to the rotation from one scene to another. That is something right now you have to do through the morph. So if you want to do something that you could potentially have the same slide copied twice and do your motion path through morph. But yeah, I hear you on that.
Okay, so this is a really good one because it does follow up with somebody that's used Morph, obviously. How does Morph handle rotations greater than 180 degrees, or does it not? So what we're talking about is if we're going to rotate a circle and we go past a certain point, instead of going clockwise, it'll go the shorter path counterclockwise. I'm assuming we're still following all of Morph's rules with models.
Yes, it follows all of Morph's rules. So yeah, in general, that's a good feedback about Morph.
Okay. Here's another one, and I'm just going to read this one verbatim. How does PowerPoint recognize a 3D capable object? As example, what kind of file types are compatible? Now, are you covering that a little bit later? Should I open up that now or hold off?
Yeah, that, so the file formats, we talked a bit about that, but where you get to file types is from here. The ones that from online sources, they come in as 3D models. These ones come in FBX, OBJ, 3MF, PLY, STL, and GLB 2.0. Stored in the file format, they're stored as GLB. So that's an open standard binary format that we adopted for actually storing them in the file.
Perfect. So at the very end, I'll give a little note I have about 3D file formats. Let me see what another one is here. So many good questions. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to read this one again verbatim. Are 3D objects actually in 3D space? Or is each object on its own layer like any other object, and is the depth is perceived by zoom and scale? So let's start with, you just rotated and you scaled up. Can we take the same object and put it in a 3D plane, have it scale back as part of the morph transition easily?
So I'm not sure I completely understood. So the question, I think the original question talks about, sorry, we'll try answering this question, and if there's another question, we'll answer that question. So you can go to selection pane and you can see the Z order of the different items in your deck. So the model itself lives on its own Z order. So the common example like I give is like the pirate on the pirate ship. So you might want the pirate literally standing on the middle of the pirate ship and think of those as two different models. In Paint 3D, I guess I only have one open here, but in Paint 3D, you can turn your scene and you can position things within a Z order. So you can have two different 3D models and you can put the pirate on the pirate ship. So if you want that kind of effect where you've got one model sort of overlapping with another model, the easiest way is go to Paint 3D, create that creation, and then bring that into PowerPoint. In PowerPoint, the models sit in their own plane.
Okay, perfect. So you could Z-order the Hubble to go behind perhaps the solar panel's text. If you on the next slide, if you change the order, it would morph to a Z-order, just like any other morphed element.
Yeah. So that works. So that if I put this at the if I wanted to change Z order, just like a morph transition does, it moves from one Z order to another as part of the transition. So I can like send to back, and then when I do this, as long as morph's on, it'll move from this scene to the next scene.
There are several comments about where to get assets. I think I can just, maybe you can reiterate or say, yes, this is true. Remix 3D is Microsoft's resource. That is hosted by Microsoft and is an easy one for us to access, correct?
That's right.
Okay. From a personal opinion, I find a lot of the content there is evolving and it's kind of on the cartoonish side right now. Other sites out there I know are TurboSquid, free3d.com I've made use of, Archive3D, 3dhunt.com. Now there's a lot of, again, we're going back to the file format thing, there's a lot of different file formats out there, and even within a file format like a OBJ, there's a lot of textures and what do you call an animation point? Triggers? Rigging points that are not going to be necessarily supported in Office, at least at this phase. So if you, I guess the statement is, if you can get a 3D model, they're not all the same, so not all of them are going to work within Office, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And you do bring up some good points about other sites. There are quite a few other sites that have 3D models, and the license and the prices on them are quite reasonable at this point. So if you don't see what you want in Remix 3D, there are sites out there available.
Okay, I'm going to, oh my goodness. Oh, this is actually a good one. We're gonna get this one in there. Can you change the opacity of a 3D object? So
That's
I
a
know
good
that
one.
can be a layer effect within 3D modeling. Can we access it here in PowerPoint or Office?
So right now, no, but that makes me smile. That's a good one. That's a good suggestion.
Ah, that's a great one. And let's see here, what's the last one I can end on here? How do we rotate? We'll hold off on. Well, actually, I think you can just read it. So the question is, how do we rotate the 3D object in 360 degrees? With animation features is the question. So if we want to go past that 180-degree mark, we're probably better rotating it using a standard animation and then doing something else with it?
Yeah, I think that is an interesting one that I think I'll have to think of if you want to, like what I'm hearing here is the need for going from one view and wanting to go a particular way around a model, as opposed to just use morph to get to a different point. Because you can get to any point in the model, it just takes sort of the fastest route there. But that's a good point.
Julie Terberg just chimed in with save out the slides as a video and insert the video, as two slides, so you can kind of cheat the system a little. They're all workarounds. We're hoping to see bigger capabilities. I'm going to turn it back over to you. I'm going to just keep collecting questions here because I know there is more to go, and we've only got 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Going. Thanks.
I know. It goes quick. So I wanted to show some sort of tricks and tips, because I know people, when I'm talking to folks, I always ask, okay, so what are the things they don't tell you? So we've gone through the basic formatting, and let me see what slide I'll pick. I'll just do this on a new slide, or this last slide. So we've gone through this contextual tab. I've shown you this mouse click. Another thing, of course, is always the format object task pane. So for any of our objects in Office, you can click and you can open a task pane. So this is one thing I find helpful. So I can do I can do most things without it, but there are sometimes I just want something very precise. So one example is when I do model rotation, where I rotate it and it looks mostly good, but it just needs a little more finesse. So here you have all the rotations right in degrees. So you can click these if you want like a very fine rotation. It's not keeping up with me. So you can do these X, Y, Z rotations here, or tilted a different direction. So that gives you some extra control if you have an exact rotation in mind that you're looking for and you want to get really into the details. You can also change camera position. Now, because these are 3D models, you've got the model and then you've got a camera. So you can basically think of yourself as, you're a person standing at an X, Y, Z position. You're looking at a specific point in the model, and that's your lookout point. And then, like cameras, you have a field of view. So how wide your field of view is. And for most models, you don't have to use this, but an example of something that might be interesting is, say you have a model that's got something on the inside and you want to go into the model. So you can move, like I can move myself to position 0, actually maybe close to 0. I'll go this way. So I'm now moving the camera closer and closer, and at some point I pop inside the model. And for the Space Telescope, it gets a little weird. You can always reset if you need to get back to the outside. But if I had something like a building that had insides to it, I could go right in and take a look at the inside. So those tools are all there. Here I am on the inside of my Space Telescope, looking in great detail at it, because when you stand that close, you're really, really close as well. So it requires some fiddling, but if you have that type of model where you want to access these, there is that power available to you. So that is, oh, and another thing I find that I've found interesting when I work with models is there are some cases, right now when you'll notice as I move the model, as I move the model, the bounding box changes so that the whole model is in the scene. And there are some cases where I really know that I have a consistent deck, and I really want the model, I want it to fit in a certain position in the deck. So it's got that particular point right here in my deck, and I've got text and other things going over here. And as I move between slides or I move between angles, I really don't want the size of this outline here to change. I want to use pan and zoom to set things up. So I can go here and I can uncheck this resize view to fit 3D model. So now this box on the outside is fixed. So as I move this model, that box is not going anywhere. And this gives some control when you're doing different scenes that have pan and zoom, where you can always keep the model the same, exact size. You can look at the whole view of the model, you can look at a particular view of the model, but you don't have to worry, or you don't have to, in most cases, you don't want to worry about having to have model pieces stick outside the bounding box, but in this particular case, you might not want to worry about having that bounding box change size. So those are some tips for getting into the gory details of 3D models. So I also want to be conscious of time. Troy, I know there's lots of questions coming in, so maybe we should just flip back to questions and see what we can get answered.
Sure thing. Let's see here. There was lots of them we were actually addressing because you covered them. Oh my goodness, there was a lot to read here. You caught me off guard. I was in the middle of typing a reply. Boy, people are bringing up projects and software that I used a while ago. It's really fun. You know, I'm not actually seeing any active ones except for the fact that I just clicked a link in my notes. Okay. Can you talk really briefly, I know we covered it, but it's really important, hardware capabilities. There are no hardware limitations or necessities to run the 3D tools, but correct me if I'm wrong, we're basically just saying performance can be hindered if you don't have capable hardware to edit, design, and then run, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on a laptop, and we use a lot of laptops around. Not a problem. This is smooth on my laptop. You do get a couple low-end devices, and I'm not going to name names. So
no, that's okay.
But you know, I think your average laptop, the one you'd be using at work, the one you'd probably be using at school, your desktop, like for most of these machines, it's fine. So I wouldn't go out. I would start with the machine you have, and not buy a specific machine or do anything for that. Like, so it's sort of hard to guide because there's a lot of factors that come into place. But it's running on my laptop. It runs fine. There's no specific requirements by Microsoft on what you need to have to use this.
Okay. And I'm going to kind of interpret a few questions here to basically say, if somebody has a 3D model, somebody referenced a medical scanner, somebody referenced another site they picked them up from, and it's not supported, would you say that Paint 3D is a probably the best resource for the general population at this point to import it and then export it as a new recognized format?
Well, it depends on what, the Paint 3D formats as well. So I think there are tools, there are apps that allow you to, so it depends on where you get it. So did you get it from someone who just exported it in a different format than the one supported? So we found some cases where there's a program, it exports to a number of different formats, and you just have to ask someone to export to a different format. Otherwise, there are a number of conversion tools. It depends on what format you start with, as which one is recommended. So I don't think Paint, I think Paint should be aligned with us, so I don't think that'll give you additional, but it depends on what format you're in right now, on what tool works best.
Sure. I think I would say that this is kind of more akin to when everybody started utilizing video within their presentations. It was a new tool set. There was a lot of file formats. There wasn't a lot of, oh, thanks for the note. I should be sharing my webcam. There wasn't a lot of knowledge base on how to use it. I think 3D models are going to kind of evolve the same way. There's going to be a lot more tools. Virtual reality, lenses and everything else are coming out, and 3D is just basically a new file format that's going to make a huge impact and explosion within many different realms, I'll say for us, presentation realm. So those tools and knowledge are going to become more common as we go. You're just kind of giving it all to us now, so thank you. I'm not seeing a ton of extra questions come in. Do you have any additional topics? We've got 6 minutes, which is amazing that we've covered so much.
Yeah, I opened the chat window and I saw one thing that's random around Morph. So it's not specific to 3D models, and I know I told everyone I'd stay on 3D models, but if there's stuff, like in the B demo, there was something that was morphing on one of the slides when it wasn't supposed to. Anything that's grouped won't morph. So that's sort of another interesting tip. If you decide you set up a morph for a slide, and these two things you don't want to participate, you just want them to crossfade, you can just group them, and they should stop morphing. So that's sort of a random tool tip from someone who asked a question about that. In terms of other interesting things about models, that was sort of the program I had today. I wanted to make sure there was time for I've got another good one. Word and Excel. So we've talked about PowerPoint, and I know this is a presentation or guild, so I stayed in PowerPoint. But if you work in Word and Excel as well, these functions are also available in these apps as well. So you can build some interesting Word documents with them. For Word, there's usage around, you want to have a design specification, or you want to tell a story where you're using the same asset across the whole deck, and you just want consistent visuals throughout the deck. So you're not going to get the morph transitions here, but you still get having 3D models that people can explore, and then being able to use the same asset throughout the deck. So that's in Word. This is it in Excel. You can actually, if you have a 3D model and you want to send it in, here we go, it's rotating. This one's zoomed in, so when you rotate, you can see the whole thing. In Outlook, if you want to insert a model and rotate it, you can insert, rotate it, and then it sends automatically as a picture, so the other person can see the view you're looking at. So that, if you're also interested in Excel and Word, the 3D models is across all of those applications.
That's an interesting question, and it's a good one, and I'm going to let you address it. Are 3D objects considered vector formats?
In the sense,
question.
Yeah, it's composed of a number of different things. So you've got the texture, like you've got the mesh, and you've got the textures. And the textures are usually like the raster, but the mesh itself, it expands. So as I make these things bigger and smaller, they continue to stay at a higher, like you don't get the degradation that you normally get from a raster. So these can get gigantic and they still look like they should. They don't get pixelated.
Yeah, so it's a tricky question because like I said, the underlying mesh, that is all vector work, and it can expand to anything. The textures themselves, or sometimes even the materials, but they're generally a TIFF image. But the models I have seen or work with, they're generally in the 4,000 to 8,000 pixel by 4 to 8,000 pixel, so 4x4, 8x8 range. So within our presentation world, we're not going to see pixelization because we're still outside of it, but that does make our file sizes a little bit larger. So yeah, it's a tricky question because they're kind of both.
Yeah,
I haven't thought about it until right now.
Yeah.
People are saying the Word demo was really good. That's something I hadn't even considered. Also, your tip on grouping to avoid morph is highly appreciated. Let's see here. What am I? So there's two things. You did the insert online. From what I'm seeing, people saying it's not available in our Fast Insider build. So you've got a little more capabilities than is currently in the public arena.
Yeah. So that is coming shortly. So I wanted to show that because that, when you see this video later, it'll likely be there. But for people in Fast Insiders, we're on just a little bit of a delay on the release on that, but coming very shortly.
Awesome. Let's see here. We've only got 1 minute left, so let me do my quick wrap up here. So we want to thank you, Stephanie, and Microsoft for bringing this amazing set of tools to PowerPoint. We've had a lot of people here live, and this has been recorded, so the Presentation Guild will make the replay available in the future. I don't have the dates, but I'm sure it'll be available hopefully very soon.
Well, thank you for having me today. That was great.
Thank you, Stephanie. I look forward to this. It's going to be great. We're looking forward to it. So thanks, Stephanie. I'm going to sign us off now. Thank you for attending today. Enjoy the rest of the week.